morning, يعطيك العافية. Today we will see the first exam material for the science, and we will start with the slides that we have on the exam. First of all, we have to know that the exam material will be from the page of the books 60, 61, and 64. So let's start with bacteria. You can see here the vocabulary that we need from this lesson, and it's included just for clarifying the material for you. And the next slide also has the meaning in Arabic for these words. So let's start. From here we can see that the person or the researcher who found the bacteria or who read or who make a research about it is Louis Pasteur. Now we can see the bacteria uses anaerobic respiration. So anaerobic, that means free oxygen, and respiration, that means anaerobic تنفس or breathing in English. Louis Pasteur did the research about the issue of sour vats. So the main problem here that we have sour vats in the French company and in the French brewing company. So it's company doing the fermentation things. So we found the sour vats. So what should we do after finding these sour vats? In some vats, bacteria will use anaerobic respiration to create lactic acid. So when they put bacteria, they are using the anaerobic respiration to making the lactic acid. So this equation is important, which is glucose turns into the lactic acid. And from that, we can see that the lactic acid causes some vats to go sour. So the problem or the thing that causing the vats to go sour is the lactic acid, who also come from the bacteria that is using anaerobic respiration. The next slide talking about the competition between yeast cells and bacteria. So during the fermentation, which means اللي هي عملية التخمر, during the fermentation process, Pasteur found, what did he found? He found two things, or even three things. The first one, that some vats contained ethanol. That's because of what? Because of the yeast cells. And ethanol, it's type of alcohol. So it's maybe has a lot of names, but it's type of alcohol. Some vats contained sour. Some vats contain sour because of the bacteria. So if I ask you about who's making the vats contained ethanol, you have to answer me as yeast cells. Who's making the vats contain sour? It's because of bacteria. So bacteria cells are smaller and faster than yeast cells. Now we will talk about the reproduction of the bacteria. We can see from here that the definition and the process, it's about the binary fission. Binary fission or fission, it's splitting the two chromosome into two new chromosomes and splitting the cell wall into two separated cell walls, and the cytoplasm also. After that, we have two main parts or two new parts. We can see the process again in these or in this slide. Why we are using the lactic acid and why we are using the bacteria, who's causing to have the lactic acid. So the bacteria create the lactic acid. We are using the lactic acid to making yogurt from the milk and makes more sour and thick. So first thing, we are making the lactic acid from the bacteria, and we are using the lactic acid in the yogurt, in the milk, to making yogurt, and which make it more sour and thick. Same types of bacteria are used for creating sour milk, like which is used to create some kinds of cheese. So some kinds of milk, which creating which make it from the lactic acid make it more sour. We are using it to create some kinds of cheese. And here we can see the yeast cells and the lactic acid bacteria shown in different colors. And as I gave you for the homework that you have to mention both of them or separate them or tell me what is the yeast cells and the lactic acid cell. So again, we will see the bacteria with a new vocabulary that we have to know maybe to explain it more for ourselves. So the part of bacteria cell, which is maybe included in my exam or in the first exam, the chromosome, the circular chromosome, flagellum, slimy layer, cell wall, cell membrane, cytoplasm, and prokaryotes. So maybe at the exam, I will give you picture and tell me which parts of bacteria cells. So be careful about that. Bacteria are prokaryotes, don't have a nucleus often, don't have a nuclei or information needed to control the cell. It's found in a circular chromosome. So that's the meaning of prokaryotes. Bacteria movement and have a different shape and size. First thing, we have to know that bacteria moving by offering swim using flagella. So flagella is the main part to move for the bacteria, and it's similar to spines like the movement of propeller of a boat. Not all species of bacteria look like each other. They are different shape and size, so we have to be careful that they are different in shape and size. Cholera bacteria is shown in photo D, so you have to see the pictures and the paragraphs from the page book. So at page 61, we know that cholera causes diarrhea and vomiting. So which of these diseases caused by cholera bacteria? Maybe you can say, or vital signs like diarrhea and vomiting. You have to solve the homeworks, and then we will move to protocols. Protocols, as we know that it's وحيدة الخلية أو وحيدات الخلية. Now we have the vocabulary from this lesson, and you have to be careful that this lesson needed a book. So first thing we should know it's amoeba. Amoeba, you have to look for page 64 at photo A. And we should know what are the main parts of the cell of amoeba. And from here, we can see that cell surface membrane, pseudopods, I think there is a missing part here, cytoplasm, nucleus, and vacuolus, and they are feeding by what? Now, if we ask ourselves, explain the mechanism of moving for amoeba, we can see that they are talking about the pseudopods. Pseudopods pseudopods. The amoeba cell moves by stretching out pseudopods and then pulling the rest of the cell towards them. So that's the answer for explaining the part for how they are moving. Where do they store their food? It's obvious from here that vacuolus is the main part for storing the food, and it's small storage. So explain how feeding takes place in amoeba. We can see that feeding occurs by surrounding smaller organisms and then moves to the smaller storage named vacuolus. So paramecium. We have to look at page 64 photo B. What are the main parts of the cell of paramecium? We can see the main parts from here: cilia, nucleus, and tiny mouth, and vacuolus cytoplasm. We can see here mention the main parts which is used for moving paramecium. It's obvious from the picture that it is cilia, and also he told you that paramecium cell moves using tiny waves here called cilia. explain the mechanism used for feeding. It's by tiny mouth, smaller organisms are moved into it by cilia. Now we can move to the algae. We can see picture C at 64, and what are the main parts. Also, we can see them from here from the picture. I should say that in the exam you will have a question about the picture and you have to name the parts. So the parts here for the algae or the algae is flagella, eye spots to detect the light here, mitochondria, cell wall, cell surface membrane, and also we have small storage vacuoles for food. We can see that they have the main parts, the same main parts for amoeba and the algae, and also for the paramecium. It also has a nucleus, chloroplast, and the chloroplast contains chlorophyll to trap energy transferred from the sun by light. So that's that's the function of the chloroplasts. Here also, if we want to explain why some types of algae cannot move, we know that they don't have flagella part. What is the name of the part is used to detect the light? It's obvious from the picture that is eye spot. What is the function of the chloroplast? And as I said, is to trap energy transfers from the light and from the sun to the by the light. And now we will talk about the photosynthesis. I explain it or describe it in two lines. The photosynthesis in the algae or the algae produced organic molecules. So we need it for producing the organic molecules. What's the meaning of organic molecules? Organic molecules which contain carbon atoms joined together. So if you look at the equation, now we can see that this is the photosynthesis equation or the photosynthesis formula for the process that we have in the photosynthesis in the algae. It's carbon dioxide plus water. It's giving us or producing glucose and oxygen. And finally, this is the homework for this lesson. I hope everyone will have a great marks at the first exam and we can see it in after the exam. Hope you are doing well and see you soon. إن شاء الله يعطيكم العافية.